This is a video for marking out the sides of the mini plant stand. So, we've got our drawings in front of us here. The first drawing that we have is for the Nat 5 mini plant stand side. We can see here we've got the one with the stopped housing. And the other drawing that we have here is for the Nat 4, which is the exact same but has a through housing instead. I've already made a start here. I've put my name on, I've labelled my face side and face edge, and I've marked on L for my left side of the plant stand. I've then taken my other piece and I've marked on the exact same name, face side, face edge, and R to let me know that that's going to be my right side of the plant stand. Okay, so now I'm going to have a look at focusing on this corner rebate joint to start with. So we've got the measurement in here at 16. We know the wood here that we're going to be using is 16 as well. Okay, so we can see that in there, that's fine. So I'm going to use that to help me out. I'm going to place this onto the edge and pop it this way around. Okay, so I've got the piece of wood sitting like this. That's going to sit flat on the table. I'm just going to come in on the corner and just do a little mark in there. So that's me, got my first bit marked out for the corner rebate. I can then take my tri-square, line that up with my little mark here, and I'm going to take my marking knife, click it into place, and I'm going to come straight across, going over it a few times, and just cutting across the grain. Okay. I can now come in with my pencil and mark that out. I'm now wanting to come in and mark on the edges. So I can come on here with my pencil, little mark down there, come around the other side, and a little mark down there as well. Okay. So that's the first start to that. We now need to mark out the halfway point on the corner housing. The corner rebate, I should say. To do that, we're going to take our marking gauge and we're going to take our steel rule. Okay. The size we're looking for on the drawing specifies it's 8mm. So I'm going to take on the steel rule here, loosen off my thumb screw on the marking gauge, and I'm going to pop on here the spur, line up the steel rule. I'm going to slide it along until we get to 8. So I'm happy that's 8 there. Can tighten up that thumb screw a bit. Excellent. So that's the 8 marked out. I would now suggest putting this into the vise. I'll slide over so you can see this. Into the vise. So I now have my piece of wood securely in the vise. Got my marking gauge set at 8mm, which I'm happy with. I'm just going to double check that there. Happy. That's me at 8mm. Now I'm going to come in and go down to the line with the spur, and I'm just going to make a tiny little indent there. Okay. I'm now going to use that indent as a little stop for me, so I'm going to pop the marking gauge on the wood, making sure the stop is hard against the wood, drawing down to that little point, and that's going to stop it from going any further down into the good wood. We can now rotate the wood in the vise. So we've now got the end grain showing. This is the trickier part. Marking gauge stock hard up against the wood, dropping that spur down onto the wood, and then scoring along. Bit more pressure on this part for the end grain. Get a nice groove in there, and now we can rotate in the vise again, and same as the other side, pop our spur just into the wood a little bit at that line, and then we're going to drag up and then make a nice score down the side, that face edge, to our little stopping point. And that is how we mark out the corner rebate joint with our marking gauge. So once I've done that, I'm just going to pop in a nice little pencil line in there, and I'm going to mark out what's wastewood. Okay, and that is us marked out our corner rebate joint you're working on. So the size we need to take off from the working drawing here is 60mm, and then paying attention to the thickness of the wood here for that joint at 16mm as well. So I'm going to take my steel rule, pop it on to the work, line it up with my line for the stopped house for the corner rebate, line it up here, come along with my pencil. I want to mark a little mark on here at 60, and I'm looking to come in with my tri-square, making sure I'm lined up there, and then I'm going to just come in with my marking knife and give a few scores across the grain. Okay, then I'm going to flip it over, making sure I'm lining up the tri-square with that edge. Pencil mark down the side, flip over to this side, pencil mark down that edge. You see it's lined up. Excellent. And then we can then pop our pencil into that groove we just made with the marking knife. Okay. So we can either now measure on 16mm to our next gap for the thickness of the housing joint, or what we can do is use the thickness of the wood, which we know is 16 as well. So we can place that onto here, making sure we're lining that up with the side of the mark we just made there. Take a nice little pencil line, make a mark there. We can now take our tri-square again, line it up to that little point we've just made, and then mark a knife in again. Right across. So that is us starting to mark out the through housing. I'm going to turn over and draw my pencil line on this side as well. So making sure the tri-square is lined up, marking down there, and then marking across here as well. And then pop your pencil into that wee line, and that's us marked out the through housing joint. Okay. One last step we need to do before we can do anything else with this is taking our marking gauge, finding the centre of the wood and marking on each side. Okay. We're now looking down at one of the sides of the mini plant stand secured in the vise. We've got the side markings of our through housing joint here. Now going to take my marking gauge that I've previously set up at 8mm, drop in the spur at the first little line, take a wee mark, drop in a spur at the next little line, drop a mark, and then using the marking gauge to pull and drag across, join up the two dots. Okay, can now pop a wee pencil line in there. We now know that part here is wastewood. You can flip the material over and do the same on the other side. Just repeat. Pencil line in and mark out the wastewood on that side. And that is us fully marked out the corner halving joint and the through housing. I'm now going to demonstrate how we do the stopped housing joint for the sides of the Nat 5 mini plant stand. Taking it from the corner rebate joint, we have the dimensions here. So from the corner rebate, we've got a measurement of 60mm and then 16 for the thickness of the wood. And we're noticing that we're only going across by 53mm, hence why we have a stopped housing. Okay, so we've previously looked at the through and how we mark that out, which is fine. Similar process, however, we don't go right across the wood unlike the through does. So I'm going to first of all line up to the end of my corner rebate. I'm then going to take the steel rule, come along to the measurement of 60, make a nice little mark. I'm then going to take my tri-square, line it up, nice pencil line across. I'm then either going to take my steel rule and mark on to the wood 16, or I can take my other piece of wood here, which I know is 16. So yep, happy with that, that's 16. And I can actually place that down onto here, making sure that this edge, this face side, is lining up with the pencil line, and then just making a nice little mark on the other side, from which I can then take my tri-square, lining up here, and straight across. Then I'm going to come in on one side only and mark across the edges here as well. I've just marked out the lines for the stopped housing here and on the edge here, noticing I'm not marking it on this side because we're not going to be cutting into this side of the wood. While I've got my marking gauge already set up from the 8mm for the corner rebate, I'm just going to draw on our little part here, mark that out. So I'm going to secure the wood into the vise. And I'm just going to take my marking gauge, mark in a couple dots each side, and then just draw across using the little dots we just made with the spur to stop it from going into the wood we're going to keep. I can now pop a line in here and mark out this section here as the waste. I'm now going to mark out the stopped housing section here by taking my marking gauge, loosening off the thumb screw, taking my steel rule, and I'm going to mark on here at 15, making sure the spur is on the 15 on the steel rule. So happy with that. I'm going to tighten up the thumb screw, double check it, happy that is 15. I'm now looking to pop on the marking gauge on the line here, make a little indent, come across the other line, make a little indent. I'm just going to apply a bit of pressure to the marking gauge and just drag it across. Now I can put my pencil line in and mark out this section here, which is my waste wood. So I now have my side of the mini plant stand marked out for the Nat 5 stopped housing and corner rebate joint here as well.